Tetris was released in 1989 for the Nintendo Entertainment System and was based on the original Tetris in 1985 by Alexei Pajitnov. This is one of the most historic and monumental released games of all time, and to put it bluntly, in my opinion, may be the closest thing to a perfect video game foundationally. This game has received countless sequels over the last 3 decades, trying to tweak the formula and change it fundamentally, but ultimately it comes back to where it started, and this is it. This is core Tetris. Tetris is simple. It is very, very simple. It is so simple, if you let it sit at the title screen for too long, it'll start playing the demo, and it'll all make sense if you have no idea what Tetris is. The demo will cut to the game board, where blocks are falling from the top of the screen, and they'll descend slowly. You can move it left and right with the D-pad, with the respective buttons, and you can press A or B to rotate it. If you hold down, it'll descend faster. Your goal is to create lines from left to right without missing one block, and when you do, it'll clear and disappear. You're trying to clear as many blocks as you can for as long as you can. You keep doing this, and your board will level up. It'll change color, the blocks will start falling faster. And that's it. You keep doing this. You can clear 1, 2, 3, or 4 lines at a time, and when you clear 4 lines at a time, that is called a Tetris. That's the name of the game! Hey, loud is funny. Working on it, okay? It's just a work in progress, okay? It's not easy. It's not easy being cheesy. Once you work up the courage to hit that start button, you'll be brought to a few different options. A or B, 1, 2, or 3. Then you got the level select, which just chooses how fast the game starts. That going from 0 to 9. Then you go. That's it. Go for it. Have fun. Keep going. Drop those little blocks, buddy. It's like Minecraft. Think of it like that. And it's exactly how I explained in the demo. Just line up lines and keep clearing them, and you level up. And there's a new color after you get that the blocks, and there's no new color. It gets a little faster, and you just keep doing that. But once you've played the game, you kind of understand it's not as boring as it sounds. For some people it is. For me, I'm not someone who's going to sit down and play this every day or more than a couple times a year. But I have gotten into it a lot because it's so simple. Anyone can understand it just by looking at it. And it can get addicting when you start to understand how the blocks all go together. You want to push yourself and see how far you can actually get and how much speed you can handle. And ultimately, it's just satisfying to line up blocks and see the lines disappear, especially when you get a Tetris. Like I said, Tetris would go on to spawn countless sequels. Seriously, I'm not going to count. No, I'm not going to do it. There's at least 4. I think this game is endlessly replayable. A fun little challenge I like to do while I'm playing is kind of fuck up the screen by placing blocks randomly and then just seeing if I'm able to clear it back down to where I was. But if you don't want to have to set that up yourself, and that's where Type B comes in. You pick the level of fucked up you want your blocks to be, and then you go at it. Clear out the mess the game made for you. I think this game is just about perfect. I think its well-roundedness is a model for many games today they ain't got that shit figured out. They ain't got it like Tetris got it. I put Tetris in an untouchable tier of video games. What are you actually going to criticize about Tetris? Of course, this is all opinion-based, but I'm just going to say this. I give Tetris on NES a 10 out of fucking 10 and not anything else. It's just that good. And just because I think a game is a 10 out of 10 doesn't mean it's perfect. Nothing is without even a flaw. And this doesn't mean everyone who plays it will play it nonstop. But as a whole package, I think Tetris is the real deal in gaming, especially if you have an NES. If you own an NES or a Game Boy and you don't have Tetris, you're committing an actual fucking crime and we will find you. After all this, you might think this doesn't sound appealing. I've never heard of Tetris. I don't want nothing to do with it. Oh, is that a fucking disease? I don't want it. And so maybe the formula needs changing. It didn't. It did not need changing. Can we just stay where we are? Tetris 2! Released in 1993 for the NES and ported to the Game Boy the same year in North America and other regions in 1994. It was ported to the Super Nintendo in 1994 for North America and Japan, with the EU getting it in 1995. You thought that intro was shitty? That's reflective of the game. This being the sequel to Tetris was very highly anticipated. Tetris was an absolute fucking hit in video games when it came out. Okay, I'm not kidding. Look at it. Look at it. So gamers and critics were looking forward to this one. This is the sequel to fucking Tetris. It's got the fucking 2 there. It's Tetris 2. It'd be like if they made Minecraft 2. Tetris 1 was developed by Nintendo's R&D Team 1, and so was this game, but alongside them, Toze would be developing the game with them. The Game Boy and Super Nintendo ports were actually handled by Bulletproof Software separately, I guess. But we're not talking about those. So how does this hold up as not only a sequel to Tetris and as a Tetris game, but as a video game in general?
I mean, it's alright, like...
My feelings on this game are very mixed, so let's just start from the top. I'll walk you through how I felt going into it. You boot up the game, get the little title screen, very simple, but it looks nice, and the title screen song is actually really fucking good. It actually was stuck in my head for a little bit, and on top of it being catchy, it sounds something next gen. It sounds like something off the Super Nintendo. A low-quality Super Nintendo game, but I mean, that's better than most NES games. On the title screen, you choose from one player, player versus computer, or player versus player. Diving into one player, you get similar options to the first game. You get to choose how fast the game goes and what round you start on before this was combined into one, alongside which of the 3 music tracks you want to use, with the option to have none at all, which the first game also had, I forgot to mention. But this is all in the same review, so I'm just gonna go back and retcon that shit. But so far so good on the options. Shouldn't have to point that out, but you might see why in a bit. And just overall, this game looks and sounds very good, especially for an NES game. So you get started, and there's a few things immediately. Why are my Tetris blocks different colors? There's like red, blue, and yellow. What are these things at the bottom of the screen scattered about? Like little bombs, maybe? That's what the cartridge looks like. You go to place the pieces, and they disappear when you get 3 or more of the same color connected in a line. What? Hey, this is insanely awkward. This is not Tetris at all. Lining up the colors feels like guesswork and about half the time pure luck. Having these ugly Tetris pieces thrown about, you instantly muck up your board with all of these colors, and gameplay-wise, this is very confusing and unnatural. Such a stark contrast to the first Tetris that was so damn simple. Oh, you know what Tetris needed? Fucking angle bracket and dick rocket blocks! What the hell? I got thinking, what were they thinking? What were they thinking, huh?
What the fuck were they thinking?
You can't even game over fast either. If you try spamming the blocks down, it keeps clearing them. This adds on to the part where I didn't feel like I was clearing them intentionally, and clearly you can't game over on purpose either. But I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm playing the game wrong. I gave the game the benefit of the doubt. I was kind of like, what the fuck? But, you know, let's give this a different approach. So I try again. New music, new approach. What about those blocks at the bottom I was talking about earlier? They were like bombs on the cartridge like I was talking about earlier. Maybe I'm meant to clear them out, so I did that. And then the round ended and I went on to the next. The game clicked. This is an awful Tetris game and a shitty sequel in my opinion. It is, however, a creative take. Once I realized I should play this not like Tetris at all, a lot of my hatred swelled down. This is not Tetris, and as long as you understand that, it's a little bit better. So as a game, it stands okay. It is kind of nice to clear the board of these bombs, but my issue with clearing blocks feeling unintentional still felt the same, even when I knew what I was supposed to be doing. So what about the other mode, player versus computer? This would have been a pretty good way to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do, but you know me, I've got 4 brains, and apparently 3 of them are dedicated to being loud. The difficulty options for the CPU, by the way, have these strange animals. I know the one on the right is a bird, but the first 2 kind of look like rats, a hyena. The CPU was way better than I was, so I lost pretty quick. If you want to consider my opinion on Tetris 2 as a skill issue, that's totally fine. This game's kind of complex, but I think it's overly complex and complex for the sake of it at that. And losing showed that, oh, the middle option is clearly a lion or a big cat of some kind. So I went ahead and lost on easy mode too, and okay, that's a deer. Okay, here's the bird's animation too. Like I said, as a Tetris game, this nowhere near hits the level of its predecessor, and as a standalone puzzle game, it can be confusing. And that's especially if you came from the first Tetris, which many people did. Do think if you gave this game enough time, not sure why you would, but if you did, it would probably get better. But I do think it is just complex for the sake of being complex. I think even if you get to that level where everything makes a lot of sense, like the original Tetris does immediately, I wonder what you really did, or if that's even possible. I do think a lot of people will pick this game up being like, oh shit, Tetris 2! electric booga-fucking-loo. And then they'll play it and realize it's kind of shit, and they'll walk away from it and not really care, because what else would you do? If you're curious, give it a shot. So with all that in mind, I give Tetris 2, honestly, a 5 out of 10. And a trophy for worst sequel. And a dog, deer, hyena, rat, bird hybrid. Maybe this is secretly an 18-brain game, and the Tetris 2 community is going to come out of the fucking sewers and spit on me, and then go back to the sewers to play more Tetris 2. But I think the game is just too much, and it doesn't know what the fuck it wants to be. This plays more like a needlessly complicated Dr. Mario than a Tetris game.
Dr. Mario released in 1990 for the NES in North America, Japan in 1991 in Europe.
It's like Tetris 2, but actually good. Dr. Mario is as simple as Tetris 1 is, unlike Tetris 2 is. Dr. Mario is also the context for Tetris 2 and why it is the way it is. Dr. Mario was also developed by R&D Division 1, like before with Tetris 1 and how Tetris 2 would be. This came out in between the two games. Dr. Mario is simple. Like I said, you start the game, it goes straight to the title screen. Tetris 1 and 2 had brief credits before. I don't know what happened here. I guess just the dock ain't messing around. You're either playing or you're not. And you get two options. Single player or two-player versus. Selecting single player lets you choose the difficulty level, speed, and music type. And there's actually only two music types. I don't know what happened. This came after Tetris 1 that had 3, and they only put 2 this time. And for some reason, you can't hear what the music sounds like while you're selecting it, unlike the previous game. This is kind of a sequel to Tetris 1, so this is weird. But the gameplay follows Tetris 1, sort of. It's like this. At the beginning, there's a few viruses on the board at the bottom, kind of like the bombs in Tetris 2. And Dr. Mario throws pills that fall down like Tetris, and you gotta line them up to create lines of 4 or more to clear out the viruses, with there being 3 colors. Red, blue, and yellow. But the difference is the blocks falling are only in blocks of 2, keeping it very simple and easy to keep track of. You get where I'm going with this? You see where they went wrong? It was the dick rocket! You clear all the viruses, and you advance to the next level. And in the next level, there's more viruses. And you do this until you game over. Play to your heart's content. It's a puzzle game like Tetris and Tetris 2. And so overall, the gameplay is good. The art style, I think, is what Dr. Mario really has going for it. I like the little virus guys. They're pretty cool. Visually, otherwise, it's very basic. This is fine. The music, I'm actually not super huge on, but Fever music type is pretty iconic. I like that. All around, good visuals and sound. I'd say this game is just as simple as Tetris is, and this is a plus. The game is highly replayable like Tetris and simple to pick up and immediately understand, unlike its unsuccessful successor Tetris 2. But understanding this game makes Tetris 2 make a lot more sense. They said, hey, we got Tetris where you line up the blocks while they're falling. We got Dr. Mario where you make the color lines and while they're falling. What if we made him have a baby though? And it was It was a really ugly baby. I'm sorry, Nintendo, you didn't deserve this. So given that context, let's update the score of Tetris 2. Bring up the board. 5 out of 10. With the doctorate degree. And a birth certificate that says ugliest baby. But Dr. Mario, I think it's great. I highly prefer Tetris, but given how I scored Tetris, I'm going to be a little picky here. I think having one less music option and for some reason removing the ability to hear them beforehand is a minus in the context that this is a sequel to the game they just made. I'm going to take a point off of that perfect score. I give Dr. Mario a 9 out of 10. I could see how you could give it a 10 out of 10. But I'm going to give it a 9. Tetris has that edge over it for me. I think it's a lot better. Give it a biscuit too. Yeah, that's it. I'm done. That's all the puzzle games I have. That's all the Tetris games I have. There's no more on the NES. I don't have that one. It's not happening. That shit's probably expensive too.